So I want to talk about whether getting tenure kind of makes you lazy as a professor. So full disclosure, I'm a professor, I'm tenured, but I want to talk about the whole tenure system and how it actually works in terms of ensuring that that is unlikely the case that's going to happen. So I'm not going to say that all people go through this experience, and I'm not saying that towards the end of a career of somebody that's actually tenured. So getting close to retirement, just like any other careers, they're going to go through the same sort of thing and say, hey, should I actually be putting in the effort at this moment? But how the whole tenure system works is based on outside judgment from other people in your particular field in terms of whether you're actually going to make contributions in the future. It's not necessarily based on what you've done right now, but it's really, really forward looking. So, by the way, if you don't know me, I'm Professor Dave Massack. I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I want to create this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. So, how this actually works is you have to get letters, outside letters, that will vouch on your credibility as a scholar going forward. And not only are these people, so generally what you want to do is get very famous people in a field to get your letters. The sort of more famous those people are, the more likely that you're going to get tenure. And those letters are really, really important. So there's sort of two aspects with getting tenure. The one is looking at your performance from the past, and those outside letter writers will actually look at your outside performance and make a judgment call in where you're going to go in the future. But also those outside letter writers are going to look at all sorts of other things in terms of what you've done, in terms of, what you're actually going to do in the sort of pursuit that you're going to do. Now, that doesn't mean once you get tenure, you're going to do the exact same thing that you've done up until this point. This is a really interesting moment of where you go through and change you as a personality. You really think about, is this the thing that I want to go through and what I want to do? And so there's lots of roles in a university. There's lots of roles in general in a large organization that you can choose to do. Many of them sort of focus on traditional research, and that's how you measure productivity and look to see whether somebody is like a productive person in the university route. Many of them focus on other aspects, like going into administration and going into different avenues that you would never think about that are really, really important to the whole university system that holds it together, that are not as readily available before you actually get that tenure, that sort of tenure credit, right? The other thing that ends up happening is that sometimes there is, for me, you kind of go through a bit of a midlife crisis where you think about, man, I put in all this work and I've got this big sort of end result. Now what? What do I do with myself? How do I sort of judge what is valuable in my life? Who I am? All of those kind of questions come up, and you reassess them and you think about them in terms of what I want to do and what those sort of forward-looking thing is going to be. There is a moment in the university system, though, that is really difficult to sort of put your fingers on and sort of transition. That's the moment of when you actually get tenure and when you become a full professor. That's pretty well known. I think they call it the associate professor slump or something along those lines. Basically, there is a well-known moment where you're trying to figure yourself out in terms of what you do and the contributions that you actually have. So in my experience, and when you look around broadly in terms of people that are doing this for a long time, generally you don't see people getting lazy. That's not what ends up happening, but what ends up happening is the tasks that you actually do changes. And they vary quite widely in terms of what people choose to do. But the reason why I say they don't get lazy in general is because of those letter writers and how people, the amount of work that actually takes to get there to be a tenured professor at a university that's really quite reputable. It is really grueling and really difficult to actually get there. And you have to make substantial contributions to the field that not everybody can actually do. And so the idea that you're going to get lazy is not really looking at past performance, right? This is idea in financial markets, right? That past performance doesn't predict future performance. That's not necessarily true. In fact, the only predictor that we have in financial markets, and is actually a pretty good predictor, is what past performance actually did in the past, to predict where things are going to go in the future. So, like just how I say, for the most part, you can make 8 to 12% in terms of investing in the S&P 500 or index funds in general. Yeah, it's the same thing going forward in terms of what my expectation is. And I'm going to make that bet in going forward in terms of both investing in index funds and mutual funds that have been around for a long time, and as well as individuals that are going through the tenure system, because you make that bet that they're actually going to keep doing some really cool and wonderful things. It might be different, it might be unusual, it might be all sorts of different ways that you might think about, but they're still working hard and doing some really cool things. Hopefully this answers your question and whether they sort of slack off after they get tenure. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye. Oh, by the way, hopefully you could see with all of these videos and all that kind of stuff, man, we work hard all the time in trying to help everybody out. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.